Okay, welcome. We will call to order the August 19th, 2026 regular meeting of the Aspen Pitkin County Housing Authority. First item on the agenda is a roll call.
Scott.
Present.
Carson.
Here.
John.
Here.
Ted.
Here.
And I'm just getting logged into Zoom. I don't think we have anybody on.
We have Liz is on, Grant Purcell is on.
He's probably going to give public comment.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
Carson.
Okay, great. Okay, next item, we have any agenda amendments? Hearing none, we'll move forward to public comment. We have no public comment in the room. Is there anyone online that would like to make public comment? If so, please raise your hand.
Okay.
Grant Purcell raised his hand.
Okay. Grant, can you hear us? Hello, Grant.
Hello.
You there?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you. Okay. If you just would just state your name, and as just a reminder for all those in public comment, we do try and keep our public comments to 3 minutes.
Great. Okay. Sorry if you hear a dog barking. My puppy's just in the background here, so I'll do my best. So I just want to follow up on the sex offender policy update. I am very much looking forward to seeing some action on this. So is everybody else in Woody Creek. Shh, 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 shh. And I just want to state for the record, why is this important? It's because we have 2 felony sex offenders who stand to inherit property in Woody Creek. Both are currently detained, but we don't know for how long. I was at the bus stop today, and I think there were about 15 kids out there, children, small children. And this delay has been long enough. And so I understand that the legal staff has been jammed, but however, this is a simple process. Federal housing authorities already prohibit felony sex offenders, so it's obviously legally permissible. And I want everybody in the community to know that we, the citizens of the local community affected by this, do not want this process to result in background checks for every applicant. The cost is absurd and the invasion of privacy is unnecessary. So here's how the process should go. Because APCHA is a government entity, they can charge applicants who knowingly lie on their applications with perjury. Just add a line to each page that reads, quote, "I declare under penalty of perjury that the foregoing information is true and correct to the best of my knowledge and belief." Also add a simple self-reporting question on the application. Are you currently on the registered sex offender list? Because sex offenders are required to report their whereabouts, it's literally impossible for someone to not know that they're on the sex offender list, so they can't play dumb. The sex offender list is of public information. It does not require a background check to obtain. Upon moving to a new address, any felony sex offender must register that new address with the sheriff. So if any local resident calls the local sheriff's office and asks to know where the sex offenders are, the sheriff has to tell them. Once a sex offender lies on an application and moves into APCHA housing, the sheriff can flag it themselves and report it to APCHA, or literally any citizen can either go online to the sex offender registry or call the local sheriff to discover if a sex offender is living in APCHA housing, then report that information to APCHA, resulting in immediate removal of the sex offender and instantly charging them with perjury. That's it. It's super simple and straightforward. Nobody has to worry about Big Brother. I and the other residents of Woody Creek expect for you to handle this simple, straightforward, dangerous issue now. You've kicked the can down the road long enough. And then while we're at it, can you please auction the 3 uninhabited homes in Woody Creek? Because we would love to welcome some new families who are desperately in need of housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Grant. We do have that on our October 21st agenda. So we will be we'll be looking at that here next couple of meetings. Allison, do we have any other public comment?
No, not that I see.
Okay, just make one more call, public comment. If you would like to make public comment, please raise your hand. Okay, seeing none, so we're going to close public comment and we will move to Board of Directors comments. Just also note for the record, Jackie Matthews has joined us. Jackie.
Okay, I guess I'm sorry, I don't know the process necessarily so well. So I don't know if this is something that is an agenda item or what have you, but I would love to try to start having some conversations about capital improvement and how we are calculating some of those. Some of the things we are including, some of the things we're not including. I've had a lot of people, I'm sure we all have, approach me about things like this and about why they are not doing certain things to their properties that I think would be beneficial for them and for us. And a lot of it goes back to how we are calculating capital improvements towards these properties. So I think it's hugely important. We need to maintain our inventory. We need to make sure these properties are in good condition for the next owners. And I just think it's something that really we should dig into. Perhaps it's stuff that's already been dug into prior to me coming here, but I'm sure it has, but maybe some additional ideas and looks with regards to that subject matter.
Thank you, Jackie. Ted, just real quick, I just got a text message from somebody who was on the phone or on Zoom trying to make public comment, but I guess something wasn't working. Can you see, is Ian on there? Can we go to Ian? He said he was trying to comment and it wasn't. Ian, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
We got you. Go ahead. I don't know if you heard. So, for our public comment, if you would just state your name and then generally try and keep our public comment to 3 minutes.
My name's Ian Metcalf. I'm actually here with my wife Jen, and we just recently bought the RO house in Burlingame, Forge Road. And I just wanted to comment about our process and some of the things we found and some of the issues we've had. I mean, it goes along with the next comment that I heard. We were just talking about why people don't take care of their houses and stuff. But we just sort of been trying to upgrade a very old house that hasn't been looked after and spent a ton of money and probably going to go over, if not already have gone over our 10% cap. And we found a ton of health and safety issues. I've sent an email to some of the APCHA members and I've shown them some photos, and I'm just trying to find out what the process is for us to include some of the money we've spent on making the place safe for health and safety, excluded from the capital improvements aspect, but also get credit for it towards the price of our house, because we've spent we spent 40,000 plus on figuring out mouse infestations in the kitchen and mold and wasp infestations on the outside of the house because of huge gaps and fire suppression problems, and replacing a lot of things that we would just to make the house livable. And we're just trying to figure out what APCHA is doing. I know it's a case by case, but in this situation, we're just trying to figure out how we go about this and in recouping some of the money we spent, because we are going to definitely go well over the 10% right away. And I don't know if that's pretty much it that we want to say.
Yeah, that these should not be classified as the same type of capital improvements as, let's say, updating a kitchen or a bathroom or changing flooring.
Yeah. So anyway, I just want to. That's my comment. We're just trying to figure this out, just like everyone else, and we want to make this house nice for the next person too, and for ourselves to live in. But it's just so expensive, and it's just this is a lot of things people haven't done, and it kind of sucks that people aren't held accountable for this kind of thing. So anyway, thanks for listening.
Thank you, Ian. Bethany, do you want to?
Sure.
Ian, I'm going to let Bethany Spitz talk on this, and I think she's got some potentially good news for you.
So anything that's health and safety related is outside of the 10% cap. So those receipts still have to be provided to APCHA, but health and safety is not included in your 10% cap. So hopefully that does help you. I'm assuming you've been in touch with someone in our office with those receipts. If not, start sending them to Pam Gable, our sales manager, and we can get you moving in the right direction.
One comment, are you supposed to get pre-authorization, though?
Not
No?
always.
Okay. I wasn't sure about that.
So Ian, I will say too, I think this is something we're going to be talking about later today. We're talking about some regulation, some future regulation changes. So, but I would say, just on anything that sort of meets that health and safety, just coordinate with APCHA and just make sure, obviously, that you're documenting everything. But sounds like those items won't be limited to your 10% cap. All right. Thank you. Just one more call, because just make sure that anybody else with public comment. Make sure. Okay. All right. Great. So we'll go back now to the board of directors comments, and we'll go to Ted.
No specific comment. Just to follow up on Jackie. I think it's always good to revisit these topics. They're obviously an issue with the public, and can use reclarification sometimes.
Great. John?
I'm going to agree with Jackie and Ted. I was just contacted late last week about one of our owners and about their HOA reserve, capital reserve studies, and I told her we were actively working on this.
Yep.
So, yeah, eager to drill down on it.
Scott?
I just want to start by addressing Ian from the call and thanking you for helping improve our housing stock here in APCHA. Part of the issue that we face is something called the split incentive. We as a housing authority, or we as the housing authority and the HOAs, don't have a real incentive to improve the properties because they don't live there. And a lot of tenants, especially renters, but in our case, not always long-term owners, don't have an incentive to invest in the property. So sometimes it takes courage, sometimes it takes that upfront investment. There are members of our community who are investing in this stock, and we as a housing authority are trying our best to support that. But this is going to be an issue moving forward that I hope that we as a board can address.
Thank you, Scott. And not to sound like a broken record, but I think I first joined the board in 2018, and capital reserves was an issue then. So this is not a new issue, and I think, and just full disclosure, Ian's my neighbor, and I've talked to him, and he some of the stuff that he noted. I mean, it's there are things that I think I would like to try and make sure that those items get remedied before a property goes to sale, and it's a very complex issue, and it feels a little bit like whack-a-mole. Whenever we try and fix one issue, there's three more that pop up. But I do think that it is something that is worthy of the board's time and can provide that incentive for people to maintain their property. I think for the most part, the majority of our owners do maintain their properties and do so because they want to have a nice place to live. But I think for those that don't, I think we need to make sure that there is an incentive to do that. So with that, we'll move to executive director's comments. Matthew.
Good afternoon, everyone. Matthew Gillen, executive director. At this meeting, we were planning to have a hearing. That hearing was postponed until September due to a family emergency with one of the participants. So that's why we're doing this regulation. So we rejiggered the agenda a little bit. We had plenty of space for the hearing, but we've rejiggered the agenda to accommodate one of the participants. Responding to a few things from the last meeting, the board did ask how board members get moved up from alternate to permanent member of the APCHA board. The IGA gives each of the funding bodies, the Pitkin County and the City of Aspen, that power. I did discuss with staff members at both of those organizations if there was any desire to reopen the IGA at this point. There is not. So the general policy from both bodies is that the alternate moves up to the permanent, but there isn't any desire right now to change that process, but I did track it down. We
Can I just, I mean,
yeah.
what was the, was there a reasoning
They
behind
still,
that?
they generally agree that's the way they want to do it, but they also want to maintain that option.
Okay.
And I believe there is a board member in the process to replace the one open seat. So hopefully by the next board meeting, that'll be fully filled. I also just wanted to comment on we've received a lot of inquiries, repetitive, detailed, persistent inquiries on the same topics. We do our best to answer them with goodwill and do them fulsomely. I have had conversations in the city. Other departments have had same issues, and there is an informal city policy that after a certain point, you don't have to go back point by point with these inquiries. I think I have a pretty good sense of what that point is. It is definitely my policy to respond fully to inquiries, but after a certain point, that does reach to a point of negative returns. So I'm going to exercise my judgment in that. You all have been CC'd in a lot of those. If you ever feel like I should be responding more, please let me know. I'm happy to do so. But after a certain point, we're not going to respond to them anymore.
And I forwarded my communications individually to each of the board members, so they've seen that discussion.
Can I make a comment on that briefly?
Yeah.
I've been involved in some of it, and just from my observation, at some point, what Matthew is talking about, what's often initiated as request for information just becomes an argument. So when it just becomes an argument, I think it's probably a legitimate point to point people in another direction.
Does the city or county have any policies on AI content?
Responding to it? No. I mean, I've had that conversation. They viewed it in terms of number and quantity of inquiries rather than how it's generated. But other city departments have had instances where they either have stopped replying altogether or ration replies to one per week or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, the goal is never to not respond to reasonable and legitimate inquiries. It's just there have been a couple of instances. One, I think when I got the 16th email in one day, I think Tom had responded 2 or 3 times. It's just become circular and unproductive and a waste of everyone's time. So staff and Tom have far more important things to do. So I think this is
I will say, though, we brought up AI. AI makes it very easy for people to do this.
Well, when Tom writes a very thoughtful and well-reasoned response and a three-page reply comes back in 15 minutes. That's
a good indicator.
Yeah.
So, So anyway, I think this is a good policy. So thank you, Matthew.
During that episode, Ted and I were texting back and forth, and I told him this was a new record for emails in one day.
Right.
In the time frame.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
And if you ever feel like I've gone too far the other way, please let me know. That's absolutely not my intention. I'll correct that, but just feel free to let me know. We have some happier items. I've invited you all to a quick coffee at Aspen Country Inn next Wednesday from 8:30 to 9:30. Reminder, Aspen Country Inn has our senior preference, so we like to go to them every now and then. So you know they might have difficulty coming to the Truscott office. And also, since last year, where we had 7 or 8 vacancies at Aspen Country Inn, we are now down to 1, which was a lot of work by staff on advertising and filling those. And just as a reminder for Aspen Country Inn, they have to qualify with APCHA, but then also qualify under the LIHTC program, which takes a future focus. So they really have to get qualified twice. So it's difficult, and also they have to come in at 40, and some of them are 50% under the area median income. So that it's very difficult for us to fill those units, but we've worked very hard on that, and that's I'm very proud of us for getting that done. And then the only other thing is the website is going to launch next month. So just as a reminder, we were having some holdups with the app, which have not been untangled, but we're still working on. But we decided to launch without the app just to move things along and not hold up the whole project. So we're still working on getting the app, but we didn't. It's like, okay, let's just get going on this. So that'll launch next month. And that's all I have.
Coffee was 26th, Wednesday the 26th?
Is that Wednesday? Yeah, I sent you. Wednesday at 8:30 to 9:30.
Thanks.
And it'll be the finest curry coffee you can drink. We're just going to bring the machine over. Oh. Yeah. And we'll have some pastries as well, but yeah. Great. Thank
Love
you,
it.
Rich.
Thank you, Matthew. Cindy, any the notifications available rental and sale units?
Right now, we do not have any rental units available except for the one ACI, but we're still working up a list that we have on that. But we are adding new sales every single week. So again, sign up for notifications. And so that's we've had quite a few coming through. So definitely sign up for notifications. And because of our new regulation, new regulations that we had changed, if you have at least a 2-year work history, you're in that lottery. So make sure that you get qualified and everything and start the ball rolling for you.
Thank you, Cindy. Okay, next item is the consent calendar. We have one item, which are the minutes of the July 15th, 2026 regular meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion from John.
Second.
Second from Ted. Any changes, amendments, or discussion on the minutes from July 15th? Okay, hearing none, we will go to a roll call vote.
Okay, Scott,
Yes.
Carson,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Ted,
Yes.
Jackie.
Yes.
Okay. Bethany, we've got discussion on potential regulation
Great.
changes.
Thanks, Matthew. Ali is going to put up a PowerPoint so folks can follow either in the room or at home. So the way that we're going to kind of work over the next bit of time is we have structured this in a way with community feedback that's come to you via board meetings or emails. We are going to put those, we've looped them together and just have a conversation whether it's something you actually want to look at. We have not drafted regulation changes. We haven't had any, we haven't written policy yet. We just really want your feedback as to what you want to focus on. So as we go, maybe. No, you're fine. So as we go through, if the board is in agreement that you would like staff to try to draft a regulation change, we can do that and then bring it back for first and second reading. So this is So preliminary. While Ali is doing this, I can just talk you through the first one, which is a work hour requirement. The current work hour requirement is 1,500 hours per year of paid work. The public has requested either 1,400 hours per year of paid work, so a reduction in the hours requirement. Town of Snowmass is 1,400 hours.
Maybe share. So we can get this up.
Eagle County, I sent her a copy though.
No, I'm trying to get it.
Eagle County does 30 hours per week, which on average, which actually is 1,560. So that's higher than ours right now. So that's kind of those are some, are we here?
Sorry.
No, hey, we're here. Just go to the second slide. Thanks, Matthew. So I don't know if you all want to reduce the work hour requirement or not. Dual seasonal with Aspen Skiing Company is considered at $12.50 the last time we checked. So that is lower, obviously, than our current work requirement of 1,500 hours per year, by 250 hours of what Aspen Skiing Company would consider full-time, dual seasonal year-round. Most housing authorities that Emily was able to find are 1,400 to 1,500, but we also acknowledge that most of them are based on APCHA because they've come to us looking for guidance from the beginning. You're okay. Some of the things we've looked at, and I'm going to thank Emily for this, she's at home. One way to look at this is we require at least 9 months a year in your unit. So if you're working, full time, that comes out to somewhere between 1,200 to 1,500 hours a year. So trying to give you some big picture. There's a second piece, which is some folks have come in here asking for approved volunteer hours counted towards that total of 1,500. Right now, volunteer hours don't count. You have to work 1,500 hours of paid work to get in. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Carson. I'm happy to facilitate if you want, but I'm going to let you do it if you want to go for it.
I'll just say this is not the first time this request has come before the board. This is another persistent issue that seems to arise every few years. So I'll open it up. I mean, does anybody have any strong feelings on opening this discussion?
I think the ski co hours are interesting. The dual seasonal, because that we are a ski town and a lot of people do tend to work there. Are one of our largest employers. So that one is curious to me. That's the one that makes me, I guess, think that maybe we should be considering adjustments to that, given what their full-time employees and them being one of our largest employers here, what they require, what they're seeing on their end. So that one's interesting, and that does make me think maybe we're not in alignment.
I like the conversation. I think we should be talking about this. We have several rigid rules in place that are all meant to get the same outcome, and sometimes some people apply to some, but not all, let's say. I mean, the 9-month is important. 1,500, you hear it from friends, that could be challenging. We're looking at a request for next summer when the airport's closed. Some people will be down. I know we're going to talk about that, but we just had a really lean winter where a lot of people in a lot of different industries were affected, not to any fault of their own. And, we don't need to speculate on what future winters look like, but it does kind of sometimes feel like we may be in for more of that, So I don't have a solution in terms of what the number should be or the time frame, but I do think, maybe there is a way, without opening a can of worms, you can hit your qualification with this or this or this. Maybe that's maybe I don't know if that's been entertained before in terms of time residing hours. Maybe you can find some way to do volunteer hours as a a backup for, when you think you might be coming in late. I think that idea is more about, is it community housing, or is it just simply, are we all just worker units who are here to produce? So I don't have the answer. I'd love to hear more ideas, and maybe things will kind of come together.
I'd say, because it has come up at least twice since I've been on the board, that maybe we should take a closer look at it. I do think that it would be helpful if we had like a list of other communities, Steamboat, Crested Butte, all the major ski towns, and see where we fit in with what they're requiring. But I appreciate what Ted just pointed out. We had a lackluster winter last year. We actually had kind of a lackluster winter the year before. And if that trend keeps up, we definitely will be needing to lower the work requirements.
Scott, anything strong or any opinions?
I would just first ask to be reminded why. Why would we do this? What's the argument for doing this? I know that there are some arguments that we could be tongue-in-cheek about, but I've lived here almost my whole life, and I've seen people who work 4 to 5 jobs my whole life. And I know what it takes to live in this community, and it's way more than 1,500 hours. Mm-hmm. So I don't know exactly what's being asked for here. It sounds like maybe what's being asked for here is something like what we just mentioned about considering volunteerism as part of this in the calculation, or having multiple pathways to qualification, or maybe it's just a matter of feeling like you're a worker bee stuck in a workers unit. But I would want to dive more into what the reason for this is, specifically because in our last meeting we had a housing needs assessment report that showed that the tables have turned on our community, and non-wage income is on the rise, now outweighs, or is soon to outwage wage-based income. So investments from outside of our community are a bigger part of what's driving this economy than the people who live and work here. That is a big flashing warning sign for me. And yes, if there is a verifiable and legitimate need for us to address this work hour requirement, I definitely want to consider it. But I caution the board that the more that we do flex on these requirements, the more we impact the foundations of this program that's protected this community for so many decades.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in agreement with Scott. I mean, I think there are extenuating circumstances beyond your control. I think we could maybe explore some sort of, one-time waiver for those kinds of similar to what we're doing with the airport. But I mean, I don't feel like 1,500 hours works out to 28 hours a week, and I just don't see the need for us to move off of that. I mean, I think if you talk to any employer in this town that's trying to hire someone, you'll hear a similar story from most of them, that the biggest asset in their business is their employees. And I think that if we move away from a workforce focused program into something, volunteer hours, I don't feel that's, I mean, maybe in the scenario where we have a bad winter and somebody can't work, you can do volunteer hours to substitute. I'd be fine with something like that, but that would be more of a one-time sort of similar to how we allow people to leave for a year, or it's like we'll allow you to do that. You can do that in a bad year, maybe 2, but that's not something that I think we should be supporting in perpetuity. Again, the purpose of this program was, when it was started, was because people were having a hard time finding employees, and I don't think that has changed over the course of APCHA. So, I will just say, reducing the hours is not something I would support. I think I would support looking at circumstances beyond somebody's control and to allow, again, an exemption. But it sounds like the majority of the board is interested in doing this, so let's have the discussion.
Okay. We will pull together Steamboat, Crested Butte, Telluride, other ski towns, what their hours requirement is, as well as Snowmass and Eagle County, and put it in a chart and figure out where we want to go from there.
While we're doing that, can you also check for any sort of temporary programs that those communities might have had for, I don't know, airport closures or something along those lines?
And can we, I've just, being fairly new here, get info on what it is to be, independent contractors, to how that's kind of set up if other communities have that, because we're still locked in this traditional, employee paycheck, 40-hour work week thing, and the work environment has changed around here a little bit, and I would just be curious to see what other places do about that.
We can do that. Agreed. We have a meeting on the books with Snowmass, I think at the end of September, to talk through sharing of policies and things like that, so keep going. Okay. Next slide. So I believe this came to the APCHA board as well as staff. It relates to bidding category requirements. So currently you're allowed to bid at your category and one category up. The request has come in to only allow bids from community members at that current category. So if you're a category 3, you're only allowed to bid at category 3. You can't bid category 4 either. The feedback, and I think, is to protect that category, to protect you. I can say the data that we were able to get for today is that 11 out of 29 winners had bid up a category, so about a third of winners from the past year's lotteries were actually a category below, and 443 bidders bid up a category. That's out of just over 1,000, so a little under a half, or a little under a half of the bids that came in were actually in a lower category over the last year. Staff doesn't have a thought process on this, but I'm opening it up all to you as to thoughts on categories and what, And the one other thing I'll say is a few years ago, you used to be able to bid, if you were a category 2, you could bid all the way up. And we did tighten it down to protect it, so it was only one category up. So the board has made that change within the past probably 10 years. Mm-hmm. So there was some category protection put into place by your predecessors.
What was the justification? So I was just going to say, so I was on the board when this came up, and the reasoning for, so as Bethany said, there were category 2s bidding on category 4, and the reason that we didn't do that was because it becomes a capital repair issue where if somebody's category 2 and they stay category 2 and they're in a category 4, that they might not be able to afford a special assessment or dues or reserves so that they could pay sort of, they don't have that category income. If I recall at the time, we talked about just limiting it, category to you can only bid on the category that you that you qualify for. And one of the reasons that at that time we chose not to do that and to say, one category up, is that we do have within the system, we have a number of units where, you can have one unit that hasn't sold in 30 years, and you can have the next door unit that's sold 5 times and compounded every single time. And so you can have one category 4 can be $250,000 and one can be $400,000. And so just in the interest of, I think, trying to, allow that flexibility. I mean, if somebody's right underneath the cap, or are we really helping them by not allowing them to bid one category up? So that's my memory of the discussion of why we settled on that bid up one category. And I mean, I think this is a policy that until we get to the point where we kind of standardize the pricing of all the units within a category, I think this is a policy that we should just leave. as is, but open to other thoughts.
I think people should be able to bid up, personally. I mean, I'm a mortgage lender, so if you're pre-approved, the bank's going to tell you what you can afford, is the truth. And there's a lot of people who, win something in their exact category, and based on dues, assessments, et cetera, and their existing debt, maybe student loans, whatever their credit profile shows, can't actually afford that particular unit. Then there's, in turn, people who don't have a lot of debt and potentially can qualify for a 5, a 6, even though their income's here. They've saved well, so they have good down payment. You can come up with a lot of stuff. But also, am I correct that if somebody, we look at lagging information. So when we're qualifying somebody, we're using their income documentation, W-2s, et cetera, from previous year. So if someone got a pay raise, and a significant one, potentially, that's not being considered when they're getting qualified for a category. So they might be a 2 right now, but in a year from now, when they re-up, they're really a 3. Now you're limiting where they can go. And so therefore, I think the more flexibility, I understand the concern with the capital reserves and things like that. But I think that challenge exists, whether you are a category 3 and you know what I mean? I think that's really an individual challenge always. I don't know if the category is going to necessarily always dictate that. So I think the more flexibility we can give people and the more control we can put in their hands, the better it is, personally.
That's good points. I guess I have 2 questions. Just how, if I was applying or qualifying now, the category I would be assigned is just based on the last year's income, or is it taken
Last 2 years.
last 2 years? Because I do think that is something that's been changing a lot too, and that year to year a lot of jobs here have good years and bad years. And I don't know, if a larger average has ever been considered, just to smooth out some of the noise in that.
So we use the last year's number unless there's a 20% difference between the last 2 years, and then we do an average for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Individuals can qualify with us throughout the year, so if they do get that job raised and they want to get into category 3 from category 2, then we're happy to relook at all their paperwork. It happens both ways. We often hear from people that say, I lost my job. Now I'm working as an hourly instead of a salaried, and I want to be down a category. So I think, it can go both ways from that perspective.
What amount of public feedback that you have here came in? The public feedback was all saying, let's
protect my category. People that are below me, below category, came in for a category 4, I believe. People that are category 3 should not have it. It's diluting my chances, and I can't bid on a category 3, so you're diluting that chance.
About competition.
Yeah, it's about.
Have we heard a lot of that, or this is kind of
Not
more
a ton.
anecdotal? Okay.
Right.
I will tell you, there was a lot of feedback from the community when we eliminated to just bidding up 1.
What was the feedback?
There were a lot of people that were very upset that a 2 couldn't bid on a 4.
Okay.
So they wanted more leeway.
Just for the same, exactly what you were talking about. I mean, the place that I lived in, Snowmass, had, it's the only APCHA property in Snowmass, and it had category 4 units that were selling for $225,000, and people in category 2 were saying, I can afford that, and I can afford the dues, and why are you limiting me from applying for that?
Yeah.
And so, I don't know. Like I said, I think this one's good where it is, but I'm open to the discussion if that's what the board wants.
I think based on your comments and Jackie's, if it's not broken, let's leave it alone.
Yeah.
Great.
Right. Was this about equity and outcome? So it's just about my category.
I believe so.
Okay. And from our perspective, this is about mobility. right? From a board. We're talking about being able to be mobile in the space. We recently made decisions about the rental that supported mobility, and so I think it lines up with those decisions to continue supporting mobility. I'm curious about why we don't let people bid down.
I think that's also an affordability. I don't think we've ever allowed anyone to bid down, at least in my 9 years with APCHA.
Well, that's
I just want to say it out loud.
Yeah.
Because then there is an equity and outcome issue that we really need to talk about. But in the other direction, I don't know.
Well, but so the reason you can't bid down, that's a deed that's like the deed restriction sets the maximum cap on the income. So I mean,
Correct.
like
It can be sometimes. Frequently, the categories are determined by City Council or BOCC when they approve a project, and so you're stuck with those categories. But that category is the designation of the category for the unit, and it isn't determinative of who APCHA decides can bid on the unit. So, was the intent when they designated category to limit acquisition to the people that are in that same category? I don't know, but that's a judgment call.
Yeah, I would say leave it. We don't need to fix something that's not broken, and maybe provide some language to staff on how to communicate this when we receive that feedback about mobility, about our intention to be able to allow the housing stock to be accessible.
It would seem like maybe part of it is how many units are there in the different categories in terms of availability, right? So if you have a ton of Category 4 units, but you don't have very many Category 2 units, if you were allowed a Category 4 people to bid on the Category 2, you're kind of, the opportunities for Category 2 income people is dramatically reduced, right? But what happens if it goes in the other direction? If you have fewer Category 4s and you allow Category 2 people to bid on them, the people who are genuinely Category 4, their chances get diluted. So it's a complicated thing, and you could throw that into the mix in terms of flexibility.
Carson, I mean, I've just heard anecdotally from friends about bidding down potentially could help with right sizing, because I think there are a lot of issues there.
That's my next slide.
Okay, because I know like someone might be living here for a while and doing fine financially, but maybe kids moved out and they're tired of the HOA dues are all going through the roof, and maybe they want to right size, but then they can't go that direction. I don't know.
Yeah, I spoke to a APCHA resident who pays the value of their home every 4.5 years in HOA dues.
Yeah.
Okay, Bethany, I think we teed that one up perfect.
We did. Okay, so similar feedback. Current regulations say that individuals moving to a smaller unit can qualify at any category, but those individuals moving to the larger unit have to qualify at that category or one below. So if they're trying to right size in a unit that is Category 4, 3-bedroom, and they're coming from a 2-bedroom, they have to qualify either at Category 4 or below that number. The request is to allow individuals moving in both directions to qualify at any category. So the change here would really be for the folks moving to the larger unit.
So I'll give you the background on this one too.
Please.
So we talked about this when we did the right sizing, and so it's sort of back to the last point that we had. The objection to doing that was that it becomes yes, we want right sizing, but also then it becomes unfair to the people who are in that category that might otherwise have had the opportunity to bid on that. And one of the concerns that was cited was, over the years, there are some units that don't require going through a lottery to be sold. And they do have a cap on the price, but they do not have to go through a lottery. And one of the comments we got is, we're
people buying $50,000 couches in order to get the swap, right? So to get somebody to trade with them was, you know, money under the table that was sort of the allegation. So ultimately, that was the reason that the board chose not to allow the person going up just to swap without qualifying, was out of fairness for the people who were in that category that want to bid on that unit. Now that's a trade-off because it will result in less
Right sizing.
and less right sizing, but it could potentially also result in somebody getting a unit that they're not qualified for, and so that's kind of the.
Because you're effectively the person who has the larger unit, right? You're basically making that property RO, because they get to then just pick, like the ROs. Right, if I'm not mistaken. So I see what the intention is there. So question though on the right sizing. Generally speaking, when you have people who are coming in interested in right sizing, are they coming to you and just saying, hey, the dues and whatnot, it's getting too expensive. I'm interested in right sizing. Do you have anyone? Or do they already come in with a person that they have picked who wants their unit? How is that usually working? Is there a way that we could open it so that they see who else is available if they're interested in right size?
So there's a Google form they can fill out online.
Okay.
Every few months when there's been new additions, I send it out to everyone that's on that list. And I leave it up to them to communicate and to reach out to see if anything is interesting to either party. Some folks want one specific neighborhood.
Right.
Some folks are open. The best chance of success is when they come in with a match.
Okay.
If not, normally people don't really want to move to a different neighborhood.
And that's why the people going down, they're the ones that
dictate,
are most likely to not qualify for the smaller unit, right? So that's why the people going down can just sort of pick,
right? Because they're willing to give up a bigger unit,
right?
That seems to align with what we want as a board, which is more and more efficiency. And so if we set up an incentive that makes that the downhill slope, it'll happen.
So the question is they want the person who's swapping to the upper, like if I'm a category 2 and Carson has a category 5 house and he wants to right size, do I get to take that unit? That's what the question, the feedback is that they're saying, no matter what category I am, I should be able to take that 5 if he and I have coordinated, right? Okay.
Quick question. So like in that instance, if it was a category 2 and a category 5, is the question, can a category 2 qualify for a category 5? Or is the question, they don't have to qualify at all? I mean,
it's the first part.
The first part, okay.
Category 2 could qualify for a category 5.
I mean, I think part of my deeper concern and questions with all of these subject matters is the incomes and the categories that we have people assigned to. So it's hard to make some of these decisions when I don't know if any of us are particularly confident that when we say somebody's a category 3, that is a reasonable number given, to your point, where incomes are, where things are in the world today in this particular community. So I think that's also a little bit concerning for me, is that sometimes we may be saying to somebody that they're this particular category and really it is reasonable for them to be at a higher one.
It's interesting, and Tom, you can.
What would be the rationale for limiting people in the bidding situation that we just talked about, which is you can go one up? What's the rationale for allowing somebody to jump more categories if they're right sizing as opposed to just bidding to acquire a unit in the first place?
I think it's to increase the number of right sizing units,
right,
if
but
that is what the board.
But does that undercut the rationale for limiting people to one?
Yeah, it's inconsistent.
It's inconsistent. I would say, Jackie, I think it was 2 years ago, we had some discussions looking at categories and what that looked like. And the affordability studies contracts just got signed, so that work is about to start. And I have no idea how long it's going to take for us to get some meaningful data to work with. But it's interesting because you talk about pre-qualifying, and I'm most familiar with the Snowmass program right now, but in Snowmass, you pre-qualify first, and then they don't have the categories. And so it's just this house comes up for $300,000, and you've either pre-qualified for that number or you haven't. And so the layering of categories on this stock that has been created over the last 40 plus years leads to a further complexity of how you look at what people can actually afford based upon whether they've turned over or not and what purchase price they came in. And so staff is certainly not set up for this right now from a workload perspective, but like there is this, further conversation of can you break away from categories, or what does it look like, and how do you get there to a perspective of matching people more with what the bank is telling them? Because I might qualify them in category 3, and then they show up to you and they're like, you can't afford anything close to this or something. And so I think, sorry, that's my thoughts, and I'm not on the board. That's
It's an interesting point, though, and I think that is, I know that's like a huge undertaking, so I don't mean to like lob that one back at you guys, but I agree with you, because I think that would be an interesting thing to kind of dissect. Is, do we just, based on who could qualify on these numbers,
And that goes right back to the city and county, because they were the ones that did the approval processes of the land use codes and all of this.
Which again, so it's going to involve a lot of people with a lot, but yeah, I mean, and like I said, because that ultimately is a lot of times what I see on my side of things is, and even my own personal experience, category that they put me in, category I bought, two different, lower qualified, easily make the mortgage. Now everybody's situation's different, and I know that, but that's where I get a little hung up on the categories and limiting people when we are trying to encourage right sizing and we are trying to encourage people to swap, but then we're putting these arbitrary limits that I don't know if our boundaries are exactly correct. Sorry.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, it was a great idea at the time, I guess, and now that we see like the scale of the program, it's if we're already qualifying people for hours and things like that, they can afford what they can afford. I don't disagree. I don't think that's what we're not going there.
Sorry, muddy the waters on that one. I mean, I think for Dow, I guess because I do understand your point with the cash under the table or the incentives. So I do understand why that boundary was created, and for those reasons, I think that's probably a good guardrail, personally, with what we have to work with at this point. I think that's probably the best constraint we have, personally.
And I think, too, it's not just the categories. It's, how do you make sense of neighboring houses that are same category, but one's 250 and one's 400? And so you've got a mismatch in sales price and category. So I don't know. To me, this is part of a much, much, much larger discussion. And maybe it's one that we take up when we have that discussion.
Yeah.
Great.
Is everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tabled for now, but we'll revisit. Okay. Next one. So, emergency workers. So, we just made some changes with the lottery and the bidding chances. An emergency worker, after 12 months in that emergency worker role, used to be allowed to bid at the 4-year lottery. So they would get kind of a bump into that priority of the 4-year. And we realized when we made the lottery change that they are now bidding at the 2-level mark. So it's really only giving them an additional year. And so proposed would be to allow them to bid at the 4-year level, which would give them one extra chance in the lottery. But again, that's really, and I can re-explain this because this is a tricky one if that would help again. But the intent has always been to give those emergency workers kind of an earlier option to enter the lottery in the top priority, even though they've only worked maybe 1 year as that emergency worker.
In the regulations, it says emergency worker is defined as a career employee or volunteer law, fire, EMS, or mountain rescue personnel who are called out to emergencies.
Yes.
So this includes volunteers.
Yes, it has to be signed off by the individual's manager. Pitkin County Emergency Management Group, I forget the current title, but they're the ones that actually create the list as to who qualifies. And then the form comes into our office signed off by their manager as to whether or not that individual qualifies. Most of the time we see it with on-call dispatch, paramedics, some fire, hospital employees, those individuals.
And our fire department used to be more volunteer.
Yes.
And now it is more paid. So it's not, I don't think the volunteer piece is as relevant, but I know we still have volunteers. So
Correct.
I think
Is Snowmass Village, though, still volunteer? Because
No.
they would be Pitkin
No.
County. They're not? Okay.
no, Roaring Fork is
Paid.
I was
I
speaking
didn't
more
know
to
that.
the inconsistency with our regulations with some recent public comments about us considering volunteer hours for
They
qualification.
still have to work full-time.
Yeah.
Okay,
they
so this
still-
is in addition.
If this is just a volunteer job, they still have to show us that they're actually
Gotcha.
working.
Yeah.
Yeah.
the
Gotcha.
job.
Okay, that
This
was my
just helps them
Yeah.
qualify sooner.
qualify sooner.
And are there any other industry types or professions that are considered in this
No.
threshold? Educators, teachers?
No, this is a Pitkin County, again, I think it's the emergency management. Thank you, the Public Safety Council, thank you, Andrew, is the one that creates this list. And when APCHA has questions, we go to them to ask if they would like to consider an addition. For example, tow drivers came to us last year and we said, that's not up to APCHA, that's up to this group, and we send them on their way. And
And I've had inquiries from the U.S. Postal Service and from airport traffic controllers in the past couple of years about this list.
And response.
Yeah. So
And auto mechanics.
right, we've had a lot of.
school districts.
So we've
Daycare teachers.
we've held the line on what it is.
And I will echo a comment from Rachel. We had a presentation 6 or 7 years ago by response asking to designate a couple of units to, for victims of domestic violence, right? Which I think everybody has sympathy for and everybody kind of wants. And I'll never forget, Rachel made the point of, that's what a community is, I mean, you can go down the list and you could expand that list on and on and on about who's important, who's critical to having a community, and how do you rank the post office versus the auto mechanic versus the teacher versus, it's, so I think that was just a can of worms that,
Yeah. So this, though, only allows them to get into the initial lottery. This doesn't give them, so once they get into the lottery, let's say then they're 2 years, 3 years, that doesn't give them, then they're within their time frame, right?
Yes, they
Okay.
stay within their time frame.
Okay.
What happens if their employment changes?
Their emergency worker status goes away.
It just means they can't bid, but if they're already in,
Yeah.
so they
Means
can't.
they can't continue to bid with an increased priority.
Do we have a system for internally updating that, or is it a one-way communication?
So we get them every time they do a qualification.
Do we ever check back on previously qualified emergency?
So often, the normal situation is we see these for our rental units because they get a priority to APCHA managed rental units. And
Yeah.
at that point, they're giving us a pay stub too. And so we get all the closing docs as well. And so
We haven't really had an emergency worker with less than the 4-year requirement win a unit yet. Because if we had, I would think that we would ask for that documentation until they get to that 4 years if they are still an emergency worker. But we haven't really had anybody who has been able to win with that advantage.
All right. So, I mean, I'm good with, I mean, I think this is honoring the spirit of when this was created.
And it doesn't sound like it's impacting the system.
No, I
So let's
think
go.
this one's,
Great.
No, I think that you guys should just check that they're still at emergency worker status before they sign a contract.
Yes.
If they win a lottery, just verify that they're still eligible.
That's a great
But I
double check.
I suspect you do anyways.
Okay, the last one specifically arose from last meeting. You received public comment about the addition of grandchildren, so conveyances outside the bid process. So currently, spouses, siblings, and children can, assuming all the regulations are met, can receive a conveyance of a APCHA unit, assuming the deed restriction allows it. The request last month, was to add grandchildren to that list. So staff has just proposed a list of questions that might help you guide this discussion. What is the intention of the rule of allowing a spouse or siblings or children to be added to ownership or take over ownership? Should they be allowed outside of the lottery, or should every unit have to go to a lottery? Who should be allowed, and who should we be helping? And then what time frame should they have to come into eligibility if they're moving here, like if they're not a resident of the valley already? So I'm going to turn it over to you. The original intention with allowing, the only thing I will say is the original intention with allowing children and spouses or siblings, not necessarily spouses, but with children, the intention was to maintain community, keep as similar to the free market as possible, but also assuming that criteria were met: qualification, employment, they're going to live in the unit, they're working here, whatnot. So. And
that is the requirement, is that if, like, say it's children, they have to meet the work requirement, they have to meet the income, assets, and then what's the bedrooms? Is it
occupancy minus one if they've been here. So just the request specifically last month was adding grandchildren. So that's kind of why we're here, but we figured we'd just talk through the whole thing.
So a grandchild is capable of signing on and assuming ownership?
No,
like
not at this point in time.
Well, I'm just saying, like, it's interesting to not even bring up the children first. I don't think I would want to.
How is that
jump
true?
to a grandchild?
Can you confirm grandchildren are not eligible to inherit property?
They're
not.
No. Wait,
They
no.
might be eligible if they live and work here.
So
but they wouldn't be eligible right now for acquisition outside of the bid and lottery process.
This is saying like an 80-year-old individual.
Well, this is the idea of saying you can sell it without going to bid directly to the grandchild you choose.
Yeah.
Even though that grandchild may never have lived in the valley or in that property.
Aren't there inheritance rights that protect
Well,
the owner?
no, that's a different question. We were talking about that. So we can't write rules that interfere with state law inheritance laws. So what if I want to leave my property, deed restricted property, to my grandchild, we can't stop them from doing that.
Right.
But what our rules say is that in that event, you gotta sell it to a qualified person through the bid and lottery process.
You have to sell it through APCHA. If it's not a valid person who gains control of that unit that's stated in our regulations, I could leave it to you, but then you would have to sell it.
Right, so the
Yeah, you would have to sell it
acquisition,
through us.
the acquisition is legit, we can't touch that, but that doesn't mean you're automatically qualified to live in it.
Yeah,
Got it.
yeah.
So occupancy versus ownership.
So
How often does this one come up?
grandchildren or this was the first time we'd heard of grandchildren, I'll be completely honest. There's a lot of conversation as to inheritance in general. Snowmass just removed it from the majority of theirs. We've been trying to figure out kind of from some of the other programs as to what they do. In Eagle, if title is transferred, the person has a year to become eligible. So, you know, I think it's up to you all as to whether if grandchildren is something you want to consider adding, what kind of barriers are put on that. They have to have grown up in the valley, or they have to have attended school, or there has to be a rationale for that. Same thing could be said for children too, in the sense of what does it look like.
Another non-contentious issue.
Another non-contentious issue. I meant this is my last slide, so we're done after this.
It seems to me that if someone qualifies for the house and fills the bedroom and works in the community, great. Doesn't matter what their label is or what their title is to whoever relationship exists. So if the inheritance law says that, because someone could write a will and I could say, give it to Jimmy,
Right.
who's of no relation to me,
Right.
and then that will comes through upon death and they have 180 days to sell.
Right now, yeah, they would have to sell it in 180 days.
Couldn't we just say they have 180 days to sell or qualify?
I have an issue with that, but
yeah.
Tell us what the issue is.
I'm not gonna go forward with that, so.
Okay.
Well, the thing is that you
You're
can
considering
you
winning
can
the lottery on
will it to
everything there.
Jimmy, but Jimmy has to does that person
No,
have
if they're not related to that person, they have no right to keep that unit.
As of right
Okay.
now,
As
and
of
that
right
because
so
that
so
would be a
then the unit goes into the lottery. The
I could
question
say to you,
here
I could
is
say to you, I'll give you $10,000 underneath the table, put me in your will and that.
Yeah.
That can
right.
happen,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that's why
That
the
person
lottery
has to-
process is so important.
That makes
so
sense.
heard that one happen
essentially
too.
what you're
That has
talking
happened.
about is giving a priority, a locked-in priority
$1,000 couch.
to certain relatives.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you gotta
Even
think
for
about it.
friends or certain,
There's
It happens.
somebody else.
Yeah,
that
this
someone
seems
got
like an
adopted
issue
at,
that
like,
is not an issue.
So I think there's I think there should be some rules. I think there should be a requirement that it's not anyone that you're leaving it to or trying to circumvent the system with, and so there has to be rules and kind of barriers, or you're gonna have a lot of under the table cash offers, I think, that we don't know about. But I think the question is it some sort of familial tie that is the guardrail that is locking us into.
I mean, even the sibling thing may be pretty generous, because a lot of siblings, wouldn't have any connection to the community at all.
Right.
Yeah, I think children is where, for me, I think.
Spouses
should
and
act.
children, you can kind of assume there's some connection to the community.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Because I think children help, I mean, again, it is workforce housing, but there is this community part of it. And from what our presentation last week was, we are losing a lot of community members down valley, et cetera. So I think children, to me, makes sense that you should be able, if your child, as long as they qualify, should be able to take your property. But I think at that point, that's where the end, because it's also a turnover thing that we've been talking about. We're talking about right sizing, trying to get properties to turn over for more people. Realistically, you think maybe that person might have a larger unit if they raise their children in it. Those units are then potentially never going to turn over if you keep allowing more and more people to take them.
Priority for siblings has the potential to
That's an interesting-
incentivize somebody to move to the community who doesn't already work here, to take a job away and a house away from somebody who lives here, works here, and can't find a place to live.
Should folks be allowed to, is there a time frame? I guess that's what I'm looking for. Can you move here if mom and dad are, you live in Denver, mom and dad are selling their house, can I just move back to Pitkin County and get a job and qualify right then and there to take over the home? Or should they have to have been working in Pitkin County for a certain period of time prior to that transfer?
Like, would a death affect this?
Yeah.
Which has just happened in town, and they want to deal with divorce, the kids. Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. Like, this should be set up in advance, I would think, if ideally, you know, parents should be having that conversation with someone. But there's still a lot of unexpected things that happen in life. So what happens in that scenario? I guess that's the question.
And the regulations are currently set up to take care of children if they're minors in a house and both parents pass. The regulations are set to preserve the ownership of that house, which has happened to those children, and allows them to continue occupancy until they're through college. And if they, at that time, I believe, want to take over ownership of that property, they can. A guardian is put in basically as so the regs are currently written to take care of the horrific situation.
Okay.
In the past, have we been flexible enough and worked with situations that maybe come outside of spouse and sibling in this way, or is it very cut and dry?
It's cut and dry.
It's cut and dry.
Children and.
Though I got to tell you, even the spouse situation, I've had to deal with that legally a couple times, because what does spouse mean in Colorado? It's different than other states because we have common law marriage. So the potential for a sham marriage to facilitate acquisition by a spouse is out there.
Nobody do that.
Which we've also seen several times.
Yeah, we have.
Yeah, I got to say the siblings things leaped out to me too. It just doesn't really sit right with me.
Okay.
For the very reasons that Tom illuminated us with.
Yeah, any of the vertical generation makes sense, but as soon as you start branching out,
That's
what are we doing?
I
That's
love
a good
that.
way to say it, yeah.
So Bethany, though, what you were just saying, so in the event of death, but that was only for minor children, right? So like if a child's 20 years old and in college and God forbid their parents die and they want to be able to take that property over, what currently is the regulation?
Right now they have to come back and qualify.
Within 180 days.
I believe so. There is some exception if a child is at a college, like we're going to work with them at that point as best we can.
Okay.
If they can document they're in school or completing a residency or something like that. Like we're not.
Yeah. In the event of death, even if they're not a minor, then they're in that 180-day get
I
back
believe
here,
so, yeah.
hit the 1,500-hour work week, and you can keep it. Situation. Okay. I mean, I'm okay with that as it is personally. I think siblings, I agree. I think that's
a stretch.
The wrong direction.
So the regs currently say siblings. So what we'll do is we'll draft some potential changes and bring this back with when we do a first reading and have some kind of rewritten regs to show you all.
All right. Is that all? That's all you
That's
had?
all. I'm done.
I had one more
Okay.
that I just wanted to sort of ponder the question if it's something we should look at. And it comes from talking to Ian, who spoke earlier today. And I think the goal is just to sort of take anytime you have a transaction with a sale, APCHA is representing the buyer and the seller. And
No,
so
we're representing the transaction.
You're representing the transaction, okay.
But that's a key distinction.
Okay, a key
because you don't have
distinction.
allegiance to either of the parties.
But that's
Thank
part
you,
of
Tom.
what maybe makes it tricky, I think.
It's tricky, but it's
it makes it tricky.
Illegal.
But it does happen even outside of APCHA
Right.
that you have a broker who is a broker for the transaction, so that neither party can say that this broker represented me, I did look out for my best interests, blah, 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 right?
Right, and so that is why APCHA currently pays for the inspection of all the units, is two reasons. One, so that we can actually inspect the unit before it gets listed, and then two, so that we get a copy of it, so that we have a good idea of what the condition of the units are. One of the things that I think we should be looking at, if you look at the life safety standards, the roof in good repair, it says right here, the inspection determines compliance with minimum standards. The requirements must include but not be limited to, and it's, windows, roof in good repair, plumbing system, et cetera. But there really isn't any regulation about what happens if there is a roof leak or a window that's leaking or a door that's leaking, which in the what we heard earlier, there was all three of those. The roof, the window, and one of the doors, all three had leaks. you know, there were just numerous issues with it. So I guess the question I have is do we want to explore adding something to say, if the inspection notes leaks or mold, the property can't be listed until a contractor signs off or something? Tom?
We don't have a provision that says it can't be listed, but we do have minimum standards that say if you don't meet these minimum standards, you're not entitled to maximum sale price. Now, well, I don't know what happens in actual practice when you have a transaction and that comes up, because, you know, the problem always is, you know about this, Carson, because the buyer really wants the unit and may not want to get hung up about the price or at risk of losing the unit to somebody else. But there is that in there that says you don't get the maximum sale price. What you're talking about would be something else. But then, you know, what are you going to be, what's going to happen between APCHA and the seller, right? If the seller says, I want to sell it, I'm entitled to sell it, and I don't have the money to fix it. I don't know the answer to that.
And so I think the answer very simply is it either needs to be the life safety standards, there's a list of 10 of them, those, any item identified in those by an inspector, a home inspector, it's a professional that we're paying to provide an opinion, would either need to be shown to be remediated or have an acknowledgement from the seller when they list saying, I acknowledge these items are going to be deducted from my sale price.
Or require an escrow.
Or require an escrow. There's currently, we have minimum standards. It says there has to be an inspection, but I mean, the point of all of this was to avoid the situation where the unit comes up for sale, somebody wins it, and then the seller is unreasonable and says, well, I don't care. I'm not doing anything. You get no concessions. I'm not fixing anything. And if you don't want it, I'll go to number 2 on the list. And I think, and that was the purpose of APCHA. I mean, that's why APCHA is paying for the inspection, and that's why this policy exists. And I just feel like we've sort of put staff in a position where there's no teeth for staff to say, no, you can't list it until these items are remedied. And so that's my question, is that something that we want to explore to give staff something to point back to and say, you can't list it until until we have a sign off from an inspector or a contractor that it's, I don't know.
In the free market, it's handled by negotiation, or the buyer says, you don't fix it,
I'm walking.
I'm walking.
Right.
We don't, that dynamic doesn't exist in our market.
And I'll tell you something. It's a lot easier said than done.
100%.
It honestly is, because it is in there, and we do get an inspection report. We do tell the person that you're probably going to have to give a credit. There are some things that come up after a lot of that stuff is done, or some of it is not caught at the very beginning because you can't see it by some of the inspection. It's hidden or whatever on that as well. And so it is a lot easier said than done to tell people.
Right.
We try to tell people you're going to have to probably give a credit, because for one thing, if you lower the price, then the person is going to have to come up. It's not going to be included in the mortgage. If you can give them a credit, it's going to be covered in their mortgage, and they're going to be able to more than likely get it done themselves. Or if it's held in escrow and it has to be used for those specific things. I do know that the person who has been doing a lot of our who has been doing our inspections had a family emergency and hasn't been able to do that. So we have told people that if they go ahead, if they get an inspector, they can let us provide us the bill at closing, and then it'll come out of our sales fee, since more than likely we would have paid for it. So we've been trying to do that on some of these until our inspector gets back. we get a sheet that goes along with it that's a repair sheet as well. Some of it seems a little bit low. It doesn't seem like it covers some of the stuff, especially I don't know if it looks at Aspen prices because everything in Aspen's a lot more expensive. But it's the burden has been put in with the sales manager trying to work with the seller on some of this stuff and the buyer, and it hasn't been the easiest. It's not the easiest thing to do with regards to that, because that she tries to work with both as closely as she possibly can.
I think is it fair to say, Cindy, that, you know, it is a negotiation right now, that seller and buyer make some accommodation with one another to make the transaction work?
I mean, I think,
and there's not a hard and fast rule that the seller is paying for everything.
I mean, I think staff would love to explore options to put more teeth on this. I mean, I don't know what they are, but you know, we've looked at it, we've tried. I think it still needs some work. So, yeah, I think we would love to take another crack at this and find more ways to put more pressure on the seller to improve their product at the point of sale.
And of course, it's logical to expect you're going to get pushback from sellers if you do.
Yeah,
but that's Carson's point is even putting it in writing takes the Pam out of the equation a little bit.
I think the way this is currently written, it leaves the ambiguity to a negotiation, and it puts APCHA staff in a terrible position.
Absolutely. I've had to deal with it. You know, they come to me with a question, how do we deal with this legally? And there isn't much of an answer except to tell the buyer to walk away.
Right.
And that isn't the outcome you want.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we're not talking about worn carpet and
We're talking
paint.
about material.
We're talking about like leaks.
They're
and
in normal real estate transactions. There's
Mold.
something called a material finding.
Yeah.
And if the seller of a house knows there's problems, and there's a number of them, it's something structural damage, including sagging roofing, cracked foundation, water issues, including major leaks, flooding, mold, system failures, broken heating systems. They, don't quote me on this, but pretty sure they legally are supposed to notify someone. You could go after them. But also with all of these discussions, couple things to really keep in mind. Don't put it in the contract, because the second you put in the contract, these problems exist on the property and need to be fixed, you don't have the option. The mortgage company will say, it has to be fixed before we can do this, because we now know that there's a cracked foundation, there's these problems. Unless you're dealing with a local lender, escrow holdbacks, what you're talking about, are also, generally speaking, only allowed if it's related to like a roof and it's the middle of winter, so you can't repair it. So those are tricky ways to solve it. So, I mean, in my opinion, I agree with you. It should not be being passed to the buyer. I think it's a bad system that we have, that problems pass to the next person with basically no recourse, other than if you want to buy it, it's as is, broken, and I didn't take care of it. But I think, you know, identifying some of these issues, making sure people are being honest, which is challenging, but getting a couple bids, like in a normal situation where you know this house has a problem, you would normally get, like a bank in an escrow holdback would get 2 bids. Here's 2 different bids to validate what the cost of those repairs actually are, and then we deduct it from the price. It seems like, and you know, most mortgages, unless they recently bought the house, they are going to have some level of equity in the house, because you can't go over 100%. USDA loans are the only ones that went to 100. No one can do those anymore. So you've got at least 5% equity when you buy the house. If you've held it for any number of time, you should have some room. You might walk away with nothing, but you didn't take care of it.
Tom, question for you. Could we add that you can't list it for sale until until the life safety standard items?
I'd have to look at that, because there are provisions in the deed restrictions on resale, and I don't know if that would be imposing a requirement that would be unenforceable if it got challenged. There are the minimum standards provisions. They are in the deed restriction, but I'd have to look at it. from that standpoint and see if it's.
Some deed restrictions, old deed restrictions,
Old ones
there
don't
are
have-
not minimum standards
I'm-
in there, and
Yeah.
somebody can say, nope, you just get it as, this is what it is.
Yeah, I'm talking about
Yeah.
in
The
the
newer
last,
ones are different,
in the
yeah.
last 15, 20 years, we've had the minimum standards in there. Here's an idea. The buyer lists the property for maximum sale price, gets it, seller pays it, or wait a minute, no. Buyer lists at a maximum sale price.
Seller list.
Seller lists at a maximum sale price. APCHA buys the unit, fixes it, and sells it to a buyer.
Well, or you fix it without having to take ownership of it.
Basically,
You get the bids.
Yeah.
basically.
You guys ready for that?
The
Basically,
issue is if you have 10 sales at the same time, that's a
Yeah.
hell of a lot of money that
Basically,
we have to come up
the
with.
government bites the bullet and sells
Yeah.
new units to
I
everybody.
mean, we've talked about that, but
I mean,
We're doing that at Woody Creek right now, so.
so I just want just one clarification. So we do require an inspection before it's listed.
yeah.
Like, I mean, I feel like, I almost feel like
Sometimes people are
the
in a hurry and
inspection
they
should
wanna
be
list it,
included
though.
to all the bidders.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, just to say, like, here's, I mean, if like, at a minimum, do that so that people can see what they're bidding on, and so that.
Standard listing contract provides for inspections, and it's.
Yeah,
that's-
and right now,
nothing new
because we
there.
don't have an inspector on call, they have the right to do the inspection when they sign the sales contract, and then we go from there. Because we haven't, the inspector that we used hasn't been, is still away, so we haven't been able to do that. So, the buyer is the one that has been, getting the inspector.
Right.
And it's usually after they've won the lottery.
Right.
And there's an inspection period that they can go through.
But
Right.
the inspection part can be handled easily. Either
Yeah.
make the seller pay for it, or APCHA can help out and pay for it. That's easy.
How do you fix
It's
it?
what Carson's talking about that
How do you fix it?
is the tricky one. Can we say to a seller, if you don't meet certain fundamental life, health, safety standards, we're not gonna, we're not gonna let you list it with us, and you can only sell it by listing it with us.
Right.
That's a pretty dramatic change, I think, from what we're doing, and I don't know.
What if they don't have the
We'd
money?
look at that, huh?
That's the other, what
Yeah.
if they don't have the money
Well,
to
that's-
fix it,
that's-
is the challenge, right?
That's one of the variables, yeah.
You can think that most often, if they're dealing with things like what you were, what Ian was talking about, it's likely because they didn't have the money
Right,
to do
but then you
it.
could say, to make them pay, you could say, okay, it comes out of the proceeds of sale, and here's
Right.
the ticket, here's what the
But
ticket.
then how do you ensure that that's all outlined without putting it in the contract or creating an escrow holdback?
I'm sorry, without what?
Creating like an escrow account or putting it in the
That's what
contract to
you'd have
ensure
to
it does
do,
get
is
fixed.
is you'd
Because at
have
one
to
point in time
escrow
we-
some of the proceeds.
Yeah, we
of
were
sale.
thinking about doing that, is if you did these, you would get it as a capital improvement. Is there a way that we can say, well, we're gonna list the house for $50,000 more, but you're not gonna get that $50,000, it's gonna go to the seller, or to the
Right,
buyer?
but how do you
would
outline
say it
that
doesn't
without
go
it
in
in the
escrow.
contract?
I would say it doesn't go to either party, it's escrowed and goes to pay for the
It
improvement.
goes to, yes, you hold it in escrow,
contract.
but then you have to find a title company that wants to hold them in escrow.
Well, in a bank that's gonna allow it, because
Yeah.
you've gotta have that stuff outlined in a contract to
Yeah.
protect everyone, and the second you put that in a contract,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you're gonna have a problem with the bank.
You're gonna have limited lenders.
It sounds
to do
like
that.
the board wants us to work on this.
Yeah, I was going to say there's a
Yeah.
lot of
This is a
discussion,
good,
so-
great discussion. I hate to interrupt it,
Yes.
but we agree.
Yeah.
It seems like it's an order of operations
Yeah.
issue,
Yeah.
that we need to make sure inspection
Should get
is,
fixed first.
is there, because I'm looking at the language of the regulations. I just want to read it for everybody, because I know we don't all remember it all the time. Seller must sign a listing agreement with APCHA establishing sales procedures and terms, including fees. APCHA will conduct additional walkthrough, blah, blah, blah. An inspection paid for by APCHA, performed by an APCHA-approved professional building inspector, must be completed prior to APCHA advertising the unit for sale. This inspection will determine compliance with minimum standards and other requirements. And then it lists life safety standards, the minimum livability standards, and mitigation of repairs. It goes on to say, if a sales unit does not meet minimum standards, APCHA may, at its discretion, require the cost of the necessary repairs be deducted from the sales price, or the seller place in escrow the funds necessary to ensure satisfactory repairs. Any escrow balance remaining after the necessary repairs meet, blah, blah, blah.
But it
And
doesn't
We
say-
have the beginning of the language.
And what,
doesn't say you won't list it,
Right.
but it does create a mechanism to pay for it.
And
So
what
in this
Jackie's
case-
saying is it makes it hard to get a loan if you do that, right?
Yes, if it's
Yeah.
outlined in your contract. But so in this case, I mean, and I know this, we're just using this as our
Just to produce.
test subject, so to speak, because it's happened many times. But in the case of this
We've known
particular
it's in
property, was he not aware of these problems? Did
th-
it not get caught on inspection? He found out afterwards? Because
I think it's, I think it's,
it sounds like the
I
seller
think
said
there
no,
were,
why wouldn't that have
right, I think
applied?
there were, I think a number of these that were noted on the inspection, and then I think upon digging into it, the problem was much worse than maybe expected. And so it doesn't, I think there were some concessions, but again, I think I want to keep us on schedule, but I think this is something we want to,
So do we.
we want to make it easier for staff.
We would like that.
We would like
Yeah.
that.
Good. Okay, that's it, right? Okay, so we'll move to the update on 2027 budget.
And Ally's going to pull up some slides. This is the same presentation I gave last week to the esteemed members of the City Council and the County Commissioners. So this is and at both those meetings, I received some pretty direct feedback, and I thank you for that. So this is the same presentation. Your feedback has been noted, and at the staff level, we're working on it. But I just wanted to give the same presentation to the board so they knew what we were coming in under. So I think the thing to remember as we go through this presentation is APCHA's changed. That we're doing a lot more operational program work. We're not just doing policy work anymore. Examples are the essential repairs program, capital assessments for HOAs, outreach with HOAs. We're doing even great work with Emily from her analyst position, which is producing more work for us. So we're looking at that. And we've also spent a lot of time in the past 6 months or so talking about how we deal with the departure of one of our longstanding employees who will not be replaced. Esteemed. And during the last board meetings, especially when we were talking about the work plan, there was a lot of discussion about if APCHA was adequately staffed for current and possible future operations, analysts, and programs. And this budget gives APCHA room to grow, to get more involved in operational programs to help APCHA owners, residents, and renters, and maximize the benefit of the program to Aspen and Pitkin County taxpayers. So, thank you, Ally. This is currently the structure, and you probably can't read that, but the next slide is a little bit more clear. But as I said, we spent this past 6 months reorganizing staff roles, seeking to maximize institutional knowledge transfer due to the retirement of a longstanding employee. And this is the current temporary arrangement, which minimizes management work for that employee to allow knowledge transfer. And this deputy will not be replaced, so the APCHA footprint remains the same. I came to the city this year for a supplemental to pay for a position which Mallory took, which was accepted. So so we're currently one above last year, but with the departure next year, we'll be back to the same status. So next slide, please, Ally. So just to remind everybody, APCHA is subsidized at the operational level by the city and the county. We call it the subsidy. It's the city 620 fund. So this is what we're requesting from the city and the county. So that's separate from for big improvements on, for example, Truscott 2, ACI, those properties. So if you see, that's a big increase we're asking for in the 2027 budget, and I'm going to walk you through it. So the good news is these are mostly one-time requests to physical improvements on the APCHA building. We have pitched that as tenant improvements to the physical APCHA space, or renovations made to a leased property to configure the space for a specific tenant's business or operational needs paid for by the tenant. In that case, this is APCHA. And part of that is, it's paid for APCHA, but it's coming from the subsidy, which is from the city and the county. Next slide, please, Ali. So one of the biggest increases is on the salary and benefits for APCHA staff. As a lot of you know, the city council, so we're nestled under the city for staff and administration. So with city council's approval in 2027, there will be a comp and class increase for all city employees. That's an average of 7%. And that's factored in this. And then and that's separate from the normal annual increases based on your performance, which in 26 and 27 are 4% per position. So that's a comp and class increase, which is expected to be around a 7% average increase per employee in 2027. Also included in this number is a payout for a retiring employee who is under an older, more generous formula for retiring employees, and there are no other APCHA staff under that formula. So part of that, this figure is a one-time payout as well. Next slide, please, Ali. Okay, so this slide and the next slide, this is the big request, and this is the actual state of the APCHA building right now. It was most recently renovated in 2021, which is when it came online. At the time, there were 3 large storage areas which were not touched, which were full of stuff from storage from other city departments. So we've spent the past 5 years nagging those city departments to come get their stuff, which they have done. So we have 3 large empty areas now, which you see there. But the main point is we are bursting at the seams in terms of staff. We don't have anywhere to put our current 15 APCHA office workers. So if you look at the top right-hand corner, you'll see that is an office with an exit at its back. Ali, we just go to the next slide real quick and then probably go back. And then you'll see the top left-hand corner, that is the 2 APCHA deputy directors sharing an office until one of them retires in March of next year. That's the top right-hand corner, that's the exit in the middle of a cubicle. Bottom left-hand corner, sorry, okay, stay there. Stay, that's fine. On the right, that is a cubicle carved out of basically a hallway. It's very small. And on the bottom left, you'll see a cubicle which you access through, I guess you'd call that a hallway of cubicles. So, and then we have another one who is working in a converted break room. So we don't have a real break room at this point. So the budget request is $450,000 to convert the 3 current storage areas into usable office space, which would give us 2 spare offices and 1 hot desk, and we would remove that cube which currently has an exit in it. We feel like this would, allow future staff increases to address APCHA board priorities, would accommodate current employees with better working conditions, and would give current employees more flexible conference and break facilities. The current conditions limit private conversations with, for example, residents or tenants on tricky compliance work and overall internal coordination. So as I said, we had some pretty strong feedback from both bodies on this proposal, including, you know, why haven't we heard about this before, which was a fair comment. We pulled this together to meet an internal deadline in June, and that was, you know, we were talking about the budget, we're like, oh, okay, so this is our chance. It isn't something I've particularly flagged to anybody before, so I apologize for that. That's the request. The city manager and the county manager are having discussions about who actually should pay for what. There's a couple more slides coming where there's probably a bit more clear on who should be paying for what. So we're having that discussion. I'm not sure where it's going to land, but this was the pitch to the both of the funding bodies, which I did last week. So I think it's going to change. Any comments from my esteemed elected officials before we continue?
You know, I support this. Did find it interesting reading the paper accounts of.
I know they focused on a few.
I think they were focused on ownership of the building and
Yeah.
Splitting 50-50 of the deck, which makes sense. Anyway, let's discuss.
Yeah.
What are we looking for in the discussion?
This is just an update for the APCHA board on the request to the city and the county. So this is an informational discussion, and you know, and if you feel like there's something drastic we've missed, please let us know. But we'll be having that discussion with the city and the county on their formal budget processes in October and November, and then it'll come back to the APCHA board in December for adoption. So there's lots of staff chatting going on before it goes formally to the city and the county in October.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, as you said, is APCHA is asked to do more. And with staffing, I mean, I think going and setting things up so that, you know, we don't have people sitting in the hallway.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. And then the tenant improvements and maintenance, that is welcome to the world of commercial real estate.
Mm-hmm. Some of the discussion, just to explain, was more actually not about the request. I think everyone agreed that these are all valid, needed things, and you could say they're all worth doing and should be done. It was more of the conversation about the two different groups on who's more responsible for covering some of these costs. So, I mean, I can't speak for everything that the county would say, but in that discussion, and Matthew can fill in some of the gaps too, it's like we're totally supportive of, you know, staff costs and salary increases as that was recommended, and it seems like this is stable office space that you have been in and should be in for a while, and we need to make it. If you haven't been through there, I recommend you do a visit soon. I don't know, Jackie, the last time you've been there, but you know, like these are needed things. And then so the discussion really wasn't. I don't think anyone took it personally. No. About it was more how it's structured. And so
we had some good laughs from it.
Yeah, and it was. I thought it was a good conversation, but I think we don't need to look too deep into some of the feedback there. It's more for John's group and my group to suss out.
Let mom and dad figure it out.
Yeah.
Totally, I'm staying out of this one. The one thing I did read in the paper that I was curious about, it was an interesting point. I'm pretty sure I know what your answer is going to be, but was about, would it be more cost effective to find, like, in my question with that, would it also help efficiency, or you not, you know, I mean, I'm sure when you all are in these tight little situations and everyone can hear everyone, it's hard for maybe you, Matthew, or you, Cindy, to focus in on the things that you really need to focus in on. So they were talking about, would it be more cost effective to go find other office space for maybe like an executive office or, you know, something like that? Have you looked into that?
That was both, I believe it was Ted and Jeffrey on the county side, and Bill Guth on the city side, and John. I mean, they all brought that up, and the answer was no. We have not really built that up, so we hadn't really looked at that.
Part of the new redesign has closed office space for Matthew and I for moving forward to have those kind of.
Do you think it'd be more helpful for you to be in the building or out of the building? Just out of
We'd much
curiosity,
prefer to
how you
be
guys
in
function?
the building.
We've
and-
already
yeah.
tried it where we had
Yeah.
had 2 offices, and it just wasn't as cohesive as us. When we finally moved all under one roof in 2021, that made us more of a cohesive group, I think. Because I've been both sides, where at the very, very beginning, we were all together. Then we were in the county building, and then we were in our own city, another place where we rented. And we just weren't a cohesive group as the housing authority, as we are now, being under the same roof.
But we will, as I discuss this with my bosses, if the instruction is to really look at that, if at least to know what it would cost, we'll do
What's
that.
available
Right.
might be
right.
challenging.
So, I
Yeah,
gave
just
some pretty
nothing.
strong feedback, as these two said, that no, I'm not thrilled with the idea of us moving around, but, if you want us to at least price that out, happy to do that. But we'll be having those discussions with the city and the county in the next month or two.
I mean, I could say one more thing on that. It was more, this isn't an enormous amount of money to have 4 extra offices and make everything work for the team and the cohesiveness. On workforce, like retention and quality employees and stuff, sometimes if people are coming from a long way, having a satellite location here and there, I can't imagine that would actually come in as cheaper. But it's just something to consider, and I know we kind of do that at the county where, a lot of people may not even be here on a Friday, and maybe that makes them like the job more, and maybe that lets you keep the quality folks. So it was the time to bring it up.
Yeah, absolutely. Ellie, you got a couple of slides? Thanks. And this was, I'm not quite sure why the newspaper focused on this, but this was, this was a request for the APCHA deck. We currently treat it yearly at a cost of about $10,000 plus staff costs, and it's in full sun, and it just falls apart every time. So this was a request for a Trex style artificial deck.
Do you use it?
We use it a lot, and it. So again, the county and the city are having a little bit of a discussion about who would actually pay for this. So this would pay for itself in about 10 years, but it would reduce staff costs, and we would use it more. So we're still figuring this one out, but this was part of the pitch. Ellie?
Flex office space.
Yeah,
I'd
outside.
say, pitch a tent.
And
Look at your office.
this was another one which, again, it's not a huge amount of money overall, but this was to bring the APCHA entrance up to an ADA standard. So that'd be 9,000. No, yeah.
Per door.
Yeah, so that would be half of that for each body to install some kind of opening system, which we've priced out. Those doors are huge. We had an APCHA staff member on crutches last year, and they couldn't get in. So we're aware.
Heavy door.
Very heavy.
One thing I was thinking about is, as you're doing it, maybe looking at a button where you could just lock the door
Oh, yeah.
if you're having an automatic door. Something to think about.
Yeah.
Love it.
Because we do have,
Safety.
there are times when we have had to restrict access.
Yep.
I can think of an instance where that might have come in handy.
And I think that's it. So those are it's some improvements to the building and some staff costs. And we're deep in discussions internally about how that is all going to work.
Well, I think APCHA is critical to the success of our whole community, and I want to support whatever APCHA needs.
Thanks, John.
We want happy APCHA employees, and we want them to stay working for APCHA for a long time.
Thank you.
I should pay for it.
Good timing.
Yeah.
It's Aspen Pitkin County Housing Authority.
Okay, last item on the agenda is adopting the 26-27 work plan.
So we took the discussion last week and synthesized that into the work plan, which I hope you will approve of. A reminder: these aren't the only things we will be doing in the next year. Excuse me. But, you know, and you can add to it as we were doing today, talking about the regulations. We've put them in the 4 buckets from the strategic plan. And, yeah, I just welcome any, I won't read through the whole thing, but I welcome any comments, or if you like it, we can adopt it today.
Any thoughts or comments on the work plan?
I think a lot of time and effort's been spent on this, and I'm eager to approve it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it captures the discussion well.
Great. Do they have to vote on it?
Okay, so if there's no discussion on it,
I'll have one more comment. I would just say that with the most recent housing needs assessment that we were able to see, if this is the work plan for the next 5 years and 10 years, if we're addressing this scope of work within our board and organization, we are going to hit a wall. We're going to reach a point where we cannot address the housing needs of our community. I'm a strong believer that, and I understand the limitations of the board to think or to promote big ideas, especially when it comes to funding issues between our esteemed supporters. I'm happy to vote on this. I think, like the board has said, a lot of work has gone into this, and this captures our conversations well. The only thing that I always am going to ask for in our work plans is an identified big ideas looking to solve the problem that's coming at us as part of our discussion. I understand that the board might not be interested in doing that at this time, and it's kind of a loose and a large ask. But I am a firm believer that unless we start approaching the issues that are coming down the pipe at us with that in mind, innovative, new strategies, that they're going to win, and that we are going to face an issue with our housing needs that is inapproachable. So I think this is great. I love what we're doing. At any time you ask me for feedback, I'm going to say, let's think bigger. And so that's all I have to say about this. Thank you for putting this together.
okay. All right. So do we need to vote on this? Or
Do we need to vote on?
I'm not sure what we did last year, if we did an actual resolution.
I don't think we did.
I don't think we did.
yeah,
No, I don't think we need to vote on it.
it's not. I don't think it's a.
It's not a resolution or
Yeah.
action item. Yeah.
Okay. Good. Well, that concludes our agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Cindy, it's a roll call.
Scott,
Yes.
Carson,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Ted,
Yes.
Jackie.
Yes.
Meeting adjourned, 5:58.